Hi guys, my name is Tiffany Kelly with Noble Soul Pet Photography. Today I'm going to show you a neat little trick on how to remove a leash from behind whiskers. Let's not waste any time and we'll jump right into Photoshop.
Okay, so now we're in Photoshop and this is the picture that we're going to be working on. And if I zoom in right here, you can see that the leash was right behind the whiskers when I captured this shot. And sometimes I have to balance whether it's worth it to do a super complicated leash removal on a picture, but in this case, I absolutely loved this picture that I captured, and I knew that I had to try to save it. So, in the course of trying to save this picture, I actually found out a really neat way to remove a leash from behind whiskers and preserve those whiskers perfectly. For the first thing we're going to do, we're going to take away as much of this leash as we can. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to grab the lasso tool and we're going to outline this leash. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, and we're just going to make sure that Content Aware is selected and click OK. Now Photoshop usually does a fairly decent job with Content Aware. Sometimes it can be hit or miss, but this time it did great. So we're going to just deselect that. Now I'm going to go in just a little bit further. We'll zoom in a little bit, and now I'm going to grab my clones. I'm going to take this up as close to the whiskers as I can safely. So I'm going to hold down Alt, and I'm going to select a sample point, a source point, and then I'm just going to go in here and get rid of most of this. You're not going to be able to get rid of all of it. I mean, you could. It might take you a while, but you definitely could. But I am going to show you a nice, neat, clever little trick to make a selection of these whiskers so that you can clone stamp safely without having to painstakingly go along each edge. So, the way we're going to do this is with the pen tool. I know. Internal groan, right? I hate the pen tool too. I don't use it very often, but man, when I need it, it sure comes through in the clutch. So, I'm going to select my pen tool. And for this, I'm going to zoom way in. I am definitely a proponent of zooming in when I'm doing detail work. I'm not one of those people who can do detail work with it zoomed all the way out. That's just not who I am. So we're going to select these whiskers with the pen tool. So the only whiskers we really need to worry about are obviously the ones that go past the side of the face. You don't need to worry about anything down here, none of this, because this is the area that we're concerned with. So to get started, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to use the pen tool. Now this is the quick and dirty pen tool introduction, but it'll teach you what you need to know to get this done. So the way the pen tool works is you click to place a point, and then you click again and drag to bend a line. Basically, I'm going to try to go all around the outside and trace these first. So I'm going to start up here, and then I'm going to go to my first section where I'm going to have to go into a different direction. I'm just going to place another line, or another point, sorry, click and drag until it matches the side of the whisker. I'm actually going to undo that because my hand slipped a little when I was finishing it. There we go. Now, if I were to try to put my next point up here, you're going to get this wonky line here, and that's because your handle is stretched all the way down here. So I'm going to undo that with Control Z. And what I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key, or I believe it's Option on a Mac. I am not on a Mac. I work on PC, so excuse me if I get that wrong. So hold down the Alt key, and then you're just going to click the point. That's it. It takes away that handle, and then what happens is you're free to move in a different direction. So I'm going to go through placing points, stretching out my handle, Alt clicking, and outlining these whiskers. Now this is the absolute most tedious part of this process, and it's really not even that bad. It doesn't take too long, and if you just throw some music on, you'll blast through it in no time. Now down here, these whiskers, whoops, Photoshop's yelling at me. These whiskers down here are a little bit out of focus. That's okay. I'm just gonna try to guess where that point would be. You can't see it, okay? And when I go back up here to join it, I'm just going to make a nice little sharpened, tapered whisker. I know that some of this is outside of it. That's okay. It's out of focus. And then we're going to do the same thing down here. Just get it as close as you can. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. That's one of the things that I'm still learning to this day. I have a bad case of perfectionism. Is that even a word? Perfectionism? Well, I'm a perfectionist, so if that tells you anything. But one of the biggest things that I'm still trying to learn is let it go. Just let it go. You'll be fine. I guess I will come down here and grab this guy. And then we'll go back up. And what I'm going to do is, so you don't have to sit here and watch me go through this whole tedious process, I'm going to speed up the rest of this, and then I'll meet back up with you once I've finished. Okay, so now we've reached back to the beginning. I'm going to close the path by clicking the initial point that we first made, and you can see when I hover over it, the little pen tool turns into a little circle, and then we click on it and we've closed our path. The one thing that we need to do now is we need to select these little inside spaces that are in between. So this is pretty easy, nothing to worry about. All we're going to do is we're going to hold down the shift key and place a new point. So what this is going to do is start a new path. Don't worry if you see all your points disappear. Don't freak out. Your path is still there. You can see it's outlined in blue. And then once you place that first point, you just go along like usual. Whoops. Clicking and bending and clicking and bending. And we're going to close that path. And then we're going to do it again. We have two little triangular kind of shapes up here. So we're going to hold down shift, place our first one. And this one has pretty straight lines. I'm going to bend this one just a bit. And then for this one, we're going to hold down shift. And I'm going to bend that one a little bit because that one's curving. Alright, now that you've been through that, the rest is cake. That was the hardest part of this whole technique, I promised. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my path selection tool right down here. And what the path selection tool lets me do is it lets me create a bounding box. So I'm going to click and drag. It's going to create this bounding box around all of the paths that we've created. And when you let go, it just selects them all. It's just a quick, easy way to select multiple paths. Now that I have them all selected, I'm just going to right click and click make selection. We're going to make sure that our feather radius is at 0 pixels and we want anti-alias definitely checked. This will help keep our whiskers from getting really jaggedy pixelated edges. And then we click OK and boom, look at that! You have selected those whiskers by themselves. So, the first thing we're going to do with this new selection, anytime you have a super complicated selection, you want to save it. Trust me on this, pro tip, if it took you longer than 30 seconds to make a selection, save the selection. You'll thank me later. So we're going to go to select, save selection, and then I'm just going to move my tablet out of the way so I can type, and we're going to type in a name that makes sense. For this, it's Whiskers. We'll click OK. And then what that's going to do is it's going to create a new channel that has that selection saved. So that way, if we deselect it and then we do, 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 more things and different steps, and then we need to select it again, instead of being out of luck, we'll have it right here in our Channels tab. And if you don't see the Channels tab anywhere, just pop open your window menu and you'll see it right there. You can open it up. Okay, so we have our selection. We have just the whiskers selected. But the area that we want to affect is actually here behind the whiskers. We just want to protect them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select inverse. And what that's going to do is it's going to select everything except for the whiskers. It doesn't look like anything has changed, but if I zoom out, you'll see we have marching ants all the way around the picture. That means that all of this is selected. So let's zoom in. And then here's where the magic happens. So let's grab our clone stamp. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm using a shortcut key. You can either use the opening or closing brackets, or you can go up here to the brush menu and change your size here, change your hardness. I like to stay on a really nice soft brush when I'm clone stamping, depending on the area. For something like this, I want a nice soft brush. And then I'm going to hold down Alt, select a source point, and then watch this. A little bit smaller. I'm just going to paint right behind those whiskers. And we're going to paint that leash out of existence. Isn't that the coolest thing? Sometimes a well-made selection can just absolutely save your butt. Now, we're going to deselect these and see what they look like. Not bad. So our leash is gone, but because the leash was there when the picture was taken, we've got some green color cast on these whiskers. If I zoom in and change my brush, you can see we got some green here, and then there's some little bit of blue artifacting there. This is so easy to fix. It's not a big deal at all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my layer. And then, remember how I said to save your selection? Well, I hope you did it, because we need to reselect it. So if I need to reselect my selection, these channels work exactly like a layer does. Which, by saying that, I mean, if I hold down Control and click the thumbnail, it selects it. Okay, so I have my selection back. You want to make sure that you are selecting just the whiskers, so not all of this. You want the actual first selection that we made. And we're going to grab the color replacement brush. Now, your color replacement brush is probably under your brush tool. My Photoshop is weird because I mess with my menus and tools and things, so don't pay attention to where mine is. So we're going to zoom in, and on our top layer here, we're going to hold down Alt to sample a color that we want to paint with. So I'm going to go over these whiskers, and I'm going to try to just find a nice dark color. Oops, I went back and got too light. There we go. I like picking one of the darker colors. I think it ends up looking better. And then you're just going to paint over the green. And it's going to get rid of all of that green cast from the leash that doesn't make sense. It's also going to help color in those lighter areas that are getting a little bit funky. And then when we deselect it this time, whoops, I missed a spot. So let's reselect. Let's make sure we get all of this. That's one of the nice things about this, is that you'll notice mistakes really fast. Or missed areas, I should say. That looks better. Okay. So, when you zoom out, you have perfectly preserved whiskers, and your picture is saved. If you zoom in here really close, do they look perfect? No, but they're pretty darn close, and this is at 200%. So nobody's going to be viewing the photo at 200%. They're going to be viewing it more of an aspect like this. So when you zoom out this far, those whiskers look absolutely perfect. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider hitting the subscribe button, leaving a like or a comment on the video. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you want to see in the future, and I hope you have a wonderful day.